At my grandson's lunch, my daughter-in-law raised her glass and joked, "To dumping the Crone soon like I was already packed for the curb. 65 years have taught me to breathe before I bleed, so I steadied my hand and let the room go quiet inside me. Then I set a single folded paper beside my plate, nothing loud, just proof that the house and my future were not hers to toast away. That soft shuffle of paper was only the first turn. Before long, keys, clocks, and a few inconvenient receipts would decide who truly showed up for family. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. The house smelled like pot roast and rosemary, a Sunday scent that settles in. I set out the platter and slid the mashed potatoes beside it. Kyron likes them with the little lumps and wiped a dot of gravy off the rim. The kitchen opens into my small dining nook, a bright corner that has seen projects and candles. I checked the place cards I'd printed last night. At my seat, someone had scribbled, "Guest Pat." I took a pen, crossed out guest, and wrote mother, owner, occupant. The ink bled slightly, a slim boundary made visible. "Grandma, is that my cake?" Kyron called voice as quick as his new sneakers. "It is," I said. "Exactly 10 candles, no more, no less." He bounced to the table where confetti dots waited like tiny planets. Behind him, my son Adnan hovered with his phone thumbs telling some other story. Jody arrived last perfume first in a dress the color of a pear. She set down a Bluetooth speaker, lifted a flute glass, tested the mic, and smiled like my living room was a stage. We gathered. Plates settled. Forks chimed softly. "Thank you for coming," I said, a simple line for a simple lunch. Kyron tucked his napkin like a magician. I set my glass down and pressed 2 fingers to the linen to steady the tremor. I would not let anyone see. "Okay, everyone," Jody sang with a professional host's ease. "Let's get this party started right." She gave Adnan a look that meant put the phone away. He slid it face down but kept it close like a habit he wasn't ready to break. Kyron beamed at the frosting swirls. Jody lifted her glass. To family, she began the word bright and thin. To our sweet Kyron, double digits at last, and to all the help that got us here. She paused for polite chuckles and pivoted with the ease of a regular MC. And to Marjorie, she said, turning toward me, who's kept this place cozy all these years, "We're grateful. Truly." Her smile thinned. "And we're excited for the next chapter when things finally clear, so we can, help her move along. To the old Crone headed where she'll be safe." She winked. "Kidding." Utensils stopped. Air thinned. The word landed with a private thud only I could hear, and then with a public one nobody could avoid. Adnan coughed on seltzer and dabbed at his mouth with a napkin he didn't need. Kieran blinked between us the way children read weather and lowered his eyes. In the glass in front of me, my face was a small oval, rimmed in bubbles. Somewhere a clock ticked. I did not lift my glass. I aligned it with the plate and opened my purse. The zipper made a small sigh, the sound of a housekeeper of decades. I slid out a folded summary, 3 pages cream paper, black ink, and rested it beside my plate, where anyone could read the first line, recorded 2022-07-19, Williamson County. I didn't explain. I didn't raise my voice. "Let the paper speak," I said, and my voice stayed even. Jody stared. Adnan's eyes moved from the header to me and back as if the document might tell him what to do with his hands. I felt the room tilt back toward level. Kieran breathed again. The speaker hummed and went quiet. I tucked a corner of the paper under the charger so it wouldn't curl. "Come on, it was a joke," Jody said lightly, reaching for sparkle that had fled. "We all know paperwork makes life easier." She laughed. No one joined. "Grandma, can we do the candles?" Kieran asked, trying to steady the afternoon. "We can," I said. "We absolutely can." I rose, took the knife, and cut a clean square from the cake. The frosting held its edges like good manners. "Make a wish that's only yours," I added like a small secret. We sang softly, kindly, a little off-key. I kept my chair where it had been unmoved by insult and the draft at my neck. Adnan cleared his throat. He did not look at me. Jody clapped twice too bright, as if clapping could rewind it. I poured coffee past plates and asked Kyron about the Lego set he wanted to build after lunch. The room stretched back into something like normal. Not the old normal, a new careful one. I slid the summary half an inch closer to me, not to hide it, but to show I owned it as I owned the roof, the door, and the quiet. By 12:40, dishes had found the sink. Sunlight bent across the sideboard and warmed the frame with our house rules. Kindness first. No sneaking paper. Ask before you borrow time. I dried the chef's knife and put it away, muscle memory from kitchens and classrooms. In the hallway, the pocket watch on its stand ticked steady as a metronome. I folded the summary along the crease and slid it back into my purse. The zipper's soft rasp sounded like an oath. Jody stood by the door and told Adnan she'd bring by some paperwork to make things easier next week. I wiped a spot on the table that didn't need wiping and let the sentence hang where it belonged, in air, not in law. When the last plate dried, I pressed my palm to the tabletop, a promise only I needed to hear. Kyron hugged me, smelling like sugar and sidewalk chalk. Adnan said, "Thanks, Mom," a line I set aside for later. Jody's heels clicked to the driveway. Outside, a mockingbird practiced other birds' songs. I locked the door not to keep anyone out, but to keep heat sweetness and the small sound of a watch that knows the hour. Somewhere down the block, a delivery van idled. I didn't look. The day had already told me what would come next, and it would have a label that called itself safety. I exhaled slow. The doorbell chimed at 8:40, a single polite note. When I opened the door, a FedEx box sat square on the welcome mat, the driver already halfway down the walk. I signed on his handheld with my first initial and last name. The label showed a familiar sender, Jody's Boutique LLC, printed crisp, beside a cheerful sticker, "Documents for your safety." I set the box on the entry console, let the cardboard cool the wood, and stood long enough for the morning to settle. Sunday had been frosting and shock. Monday brought paper. I carried the package to the kitchen table where the light is honest. The knife from last night cut the tape with a soft sigh. Inside, beneath bubble wrap and a scented card, lay a neat stack. Durable power of attorney, real property rider, a pre-filled notary acknowledgement, and a return envelope already stamped. A yellow sticky rested on top, sign plus return. No need to bother with a lawyer. My phone blinked. A text from Adnan. Jody did this to help Mom. I turned the phone face down and read every line. The clauses were not shy. Agent may sell, convey, or encumber principal's residence as necessary for care needs deemed appropriate. Agent may change mailing addresses and access safe deposit boxes. Agent may contract for placement and sign admissions. It was written in the smooth voice of convenience grease skids, no splinters. I clicked a highlighter cap on, then off. I made tidy margin notes, no consent, review, title already recorded 2022. When I paused, the refrigerator hummed like it was thinking about it too, and the air felt a degree cooler. I reached for a red pen. Across the cover letter, I drew a clean diagonal line and wrote in block letters, "Declined, refer to counsel on file." I signed my name beneath the note as though I were signing a check to myself. I photographed each page, the lens catching the fine fibers of the paper, then composed an email to Gloria, my elder law attorney, subject line, "Received POA package request review. No consent." I attached scans and a photo of the shipping label. I hit send, waited for message sent, and printed the confirmation for my paper folder labeled ethics. The phone rang with Jody's name on the screen. I let it reach voicemail. A text followed on its heels. "Please sign, today it's safer." I created a new folder on my phone called After Toast and slid both messages into it. To Adnan alone, I replied, "I prefer my attorney to review any documents. Lunch was for Kyron." Then I set the phone face down again and made tea. If safety was the banner, I would inventory the truth of it. I walked the hallway and checked the grab bars I installed last fall. In the bathroom, the non-slip mat lay where it always does. In the pantry, the flashlight was charged. The medication list on the fridge held current dates and dosages with my doctor's number in thick ink. I took simple photographs and drafted a one-page home safety upgrades sheet with bullet points a firefighter would respect. No drama, just rails mats numbers and a magnet strong enough to hold them in place. I slipped a copy into the folder with the deed summary. Gloria called at 1:15. I put her on speaker and opened the folder where the confirmation slip still smelled like warm paper. She approved the red line refusal and asked me to forward the scans and the label. "You did the right thing, Marjorie," she said. "We'll add a revocable guest license for anyone who stays here and a small entry sign reminding visitors that all documents go through counsel." Wednesday at 10 works. It did. She reminded me that in Texas I can record calls I initiate if needed and that voicemails are already mine to keep. Before we hung up, my calendar pinged. I wrote WED 10-0 Gloria in ink as well. Digital is fine. Paper is better. In the late afternoon, the house returned to its quiet grammar. I poured another cup of tea and sat by the pocket watch, its steady tick the sound of a heart that keeps its own time. If safety is about showing up, then it can be measured without a speech. I wrote out 2 index cards and taped them by the phone, family and neighbor, with numbers in large pen. I slid the small rug away from the sofa to a clear patch of floor and practiced lowering myself there and getting up again. No theatrics, no calls yet, only a plan even a nurse would approve. I placed my cell on the end table where it catches a strong signal. The sun fell behind the live oaks and the rooms went to that soft Texas dusk that makes everything honest. I placed the FedEx box back on the console as a kind of label for the week they will try the door first with paper. I closed my purse around the red pen and the printed confirmation, then set both on the sideboard. The watch ticked. The dishwasher breathed. Somewhere a delivery truck downshifted at the corner. I didn't need to see it to know what it carried. By midweek, all I would need was a phone, a steady voice, and the truth of who came to my door first. I told no one. Plans breathe in quiet. Kyron needn't worry, Adnan needn't feel trapped, Jody needn't be tipped off. I set a bottle of water and a folded towel by the cleared rug the way a therapist taught me after Travis died. The index cards looked like recipes, ingredients for presents. When the watch marked the half hour with a click, I tested my voice in empty room calm brief. Help is a verb, I reminded myself. We would see who used it. Dusk laid a gentle ribbon across my living room as I slid the small rug away from the coffee table. I placed the phone where a reach would find it and set 2 index cards beside it, family and neighbor numbers in clean ink. I read each aloud like a recipe I meant to memorize. The pocket watch on the sideboard ticked with the same patient beat Travis kept when he waited for bread to rise. I wasn't building a trap. I was setting a measure. If safety was the word they loved, I would learn what it meant. At 6:20, I lowered myself to the floor the way the physical therapist taught me after surgery years ago, one knee, then the other palms, flat head steady. My back complained a brief line of heat at the hip, nothing dramatic, only honest. I eased onto my side, left the phone within 2 fingers, and breathed until the tightness softened. In the quiet, I could hear the fridge hum and the neighbor's sprinkler tick, the plain music of a Wednesday night in Cedar Park. I dialed Adnan first, speaker on. 4 rings and the machine took it. "It's Mom," I said, voice clear. "I've fallen and can't get up without help. Please come." I hung up, pressed Jody's name, and left the same message without adding apology or explanation. I tapped Kyron's contact by reflex and stopped it before the first chime. No child needs to carry that kind of alarm. I looked at the clock on my phone and wrote the times on a sticky note I'd stuck to the case earlier, a tidy ledger of minutes that 2 minutes can be a long time, or the whole world. When I called Teresa, I didn't finish the sentence before she answered. "Don't move if it hurts," she said. "I'm coming." The doorbell rang at 2 minutes, 2 seconds. She used the spare key from the blue planter without fuss. Still in her gardening gloves, she knelt by me and scanned my face, the way librarians read a page for sense. "Hip, shoulder." "Hip's fine," I said. "Back is grumpy." We counted to 3 together and with a pillow under my knee, and we made tea because that is what decent people do after small storms. I stayed seated while she set out 2 mugs and found the honey, without asking the way only a neighbor who actually visits knows a kitchen. We didn't gossip. We didn't diagnose. She noticed the place card from Sunday tucked by the napkins and slid it out to read my correction. Mother, owner, occupant, smiled at the firmness of the pen and slid it back. I told her only what she needed. There had been a toast, there had been a box, and Tony. Teresa asked if I wanted her to call anyone. No, I said not tonight. She respected that boundary the way some people respect fences, while others test them. We talked about the tomatoes setting on her vines, the bully mockingbirds at my feeder, the library sale this weekend. Normal talk is a kind of splint. It holds the ache still, so it can knit. When the kettle clicked, she poured, and I noticed her hands steady, square capable. The kind of hands that can shelve a heavy atlas and also fold. By 9:43, my phone buzzed once. Adnan just saw your message, everything okay? No call from Jody. I took a screenshot, labeled it with the date and time, and saved it to the folder where the FedEx label slept beside the red-lined cover letter. I did not reply. Teresa stood, squeezed my hand, and said, "Call me if you need me in the night." The pocket watch ticked once in the quiet, like a period at the end of a sentence. When her porch light clicked off, the house settled its shoulders again. I wrote 3 lines in my journal at the hallway desk, nothing more. 6:22 p.m. messages to family. 6:24 p.m. Teresa at door. 9:43 p.m. Text from Adnan, no call. I printed the page from the little wireless printer and slid it under the ethics tab behind the deed summary and the email confirmation to Gloria. Evidence shouldn't have anger in it. It should have dates. Before bed, I put the index cards back in the drawer, set a bottle of water by the cleared rug, and laid the pocket watch on the nightstand. In the doorway, I said one sentence to the room, quiet enough that only the walls needed to hear it. Family is who shows up. I brushed my teeth, stretched the back that had carried children and groceries and grief, and let the day go. The phone was on the charger with the ringer turned up, not out of fear, but out of habit. Across the street, a garage door rattled closed, and a dog made a soft, satisfied sound like a broom settling back into its corner. I washed the 2 mugs, set them to dry on a towel, and turned the deadbolt with the calm click of a habit. Outside, a cicada rasped in the oaks, a rehearsal of summer, and it sounded like someone practicing truth. When I slipped under the quilt, a new email slid into the inbox with a cheerful chime that didn't know how to whisper. The subject line flashed across the lock screen, RE care options for Marjorie, quick thought. A thread had been forwarded from someone who should have checked the recipients. I did not open it yet. I let it sit there on the phone like a hot pan cooling and watched the watch hands stack at 10 o'clock. By Thursday afternoon, I knew some words would say themselves out loud. I turned. At 1:12 on Thursday, the house was quiet enough to hear the hallway clock. Sun ran across the kitchen table. My phone chimed 3 times in a neat cluster. Subject line stacked weekend plans for Mom, then then another Ray. I slid on my reading glasses and opened the thread. People are braver with a keyboard than with a face. The table stayed steady under my hands. Jody's reply all sat at the top. As soon as the house clears, she wrote, "We'll relocate her. It's safer for everyone." A breath later, doctors can sign capacity letters quickly. No need to involve a lawyer, it complicates. A nephew added a thumbs up. A cousin asked for a date. Adnan typed only, "Let's discuss later." No period. I read the chain twice, not to bruise myself with it, but to learn its edges. As soon as the house clears what me, I tapped, print. The old laser hummed, warm pages slid into the tray headers and timestamps included. I drew 1 yellow line under as soon as the house clears, another under no lawyer, then 3-hole punched the stack and filed it behind the tab I'd lettered last year ethics. I exported the thread to a PDF and emailed it to myself and to Gloria with the subject, "For the record." I texted Adnan, "I'll discuss my future only in my home with counsel copied and without surprise paperwork." Delivered. I set the phone face down. Outside, the live oak dragged slow shadows across the siding. A dot of blue icing still clung to the placemat from Sunday. I left it there. Gloria called. "Good you preserved the headers," she said. "Next, we'll formalize house rules. Revocable guest license key custody, a small frame notice at the entry. Friday at 3 to sign. No need to reply all. Let the paper speak." Her calm fit the room like a level shelf. We confirmed the appointment. I promised to send the shipping label from Monday's package, the one that claimed it was for my safety. At 3:05, I walked to the mailbox. Heat rose off the pavement. In the box, a church flyer for Sunday potluck, "Bring a dish or a story." I folded it once and slipped it into my purse. There will be time for other stories, I thought. Today belonged to ink. Back inside, I prepared 2 envelopes. In one, I placed the printed thread and wrote a neat footer on page 1, file 005-0825, 1:28 p.m. I addressed it to myself so the postmark would add its own small truth. In the other, I placed a duplicate for Gloria. On the shelf above the sideboard, I set the ethics binder beside the life estate binder and laid Travis's pocket watch on top. Tick-tock. If this house has a pulse, that's the sound. I poured water and sat without doing a thing for a minute. The minute was the point. People who intend to erase you try to hurry you first. I watched the second-hand sweep. No one was coming through my door unannounced today. No email thread would decide my life while pretending I wouldn't read it. I spent a career teaching preschoolers about indoor voices. The adult version is documents. The phone stayed quiet. Adnan didn't respond. That used to snag me like a loose nail catching a sock. Today it only told me where to put my weight. I thought of Kieran's careful way of blowing out candles so as not to spit. Children know the difference between a wish and a plan. Adults pretend not to. On the entry console, I set the empty mini frame Gloria mentioned. Tomorrow it would hold words, not pictures. Respect the door. Appointments only. No documents signed without counsel. No keys leave the hook. This is my home. I carried the 2 envelopes to the outgoing basket by the door so I'd remember the post office in the morning. The basket is a simple thing, but it has saved me more steps than I can count. The older you get, the more you let your house carry for you. I opened the church flyer and traced the line that said, "Bring a dish or a story. Names matter. Frames matter." The watch on the binders kept time that felt like mine. I stood and let the quiet pass through the rooms like air through a screen. The house knows me. It knows how to hold silence without swallowing me. I set the empty frame square on the console and let the house memorize the moment. By tomorrow afternoon, whisper and rumor would give way to print and ink. Gloria arrived at 10 with a leather folio and a mobile notary whose briefcase clicked shut like a metronome. I'd cleared the living room coffee table so the pages would lie flat. No speeches, just names, parcel number. My street printed, clean across the top line. "This confirms your primary residence," Gloria said, touching a clause with her pen. "Access by invitation. No unscheduled entry. No key custody without written consent. No overnights. Emergency protocol here." I read each paragraph the way I used to read to my preschoolers, slow enough to understand, steady enough to keep the room calm. I initialed every margin in my square hand. The notary's stamp landed with a soft thud, time and date, recorded seal, raised like a small ridge of spine through the paper, ink before voices. We moved to the foyer. I slid the printed house rules into a clean 5x7 frame, held a tiny level against the top edge, and waited for the bubble to settle between lines. The language was plain appointments only. Ring the bell. Wait to be greeted. No documents reviewed or signed without counsel present. No keys leave the hook. For emergencies, call 911, then call me. This is my home. Thank you for honoring safe visits. Gloria photographed the posting. For the file, she said, paper remembers. At my desk, I emailed Adnan and Jody, copying Gloria House access and safety rules effective today. I attached the signed revocable guest license and the photo of the frame. No italics, no underlines, just documents and a date. I printed a copy for the ethics binder, slipped another into the life estate binder, and addressed one to the HOA manager by certified mail record only. The notary waved goodbye. Gloria squeezed my shoulder. "Let the frame do the talking," she said. The door clicked shut. The house felt a little taller. They came at two, walking in sync, one practiced smile leading the other. From the window, I saw Jody's hand go to the handle as if the frame weren't there. She paused to read, mouth tightening before she smoothed it flat. I opened the door enough for air and light. "You can't be serious, Mom," she said, voice sweet with a metal aftertaste. "Very serious," I answered. Adnan's eyes tracked from my face to the frame to the floor. "This makes it hard to help you," he said. I touched the line about scheduled hours and the emergency number. "Help has a schedule," I said. "Emergencies have a number. We keep a spare key for safety," Jody tried. I shook my head once. Keys follow rules. I handed Adnan a printed card, single-use guest code for the smart lock, good until 5, and beneath it, my contact protocol call first. If no answer, text. Do not enter without voice confirmation. If I don't pick up, I said you don't come in. We schedule. He nodded, pocketing the card like it might burn through his pocket. Jody stared at the frame as if she could blink it off the wall. "This feels hostile," she said. "It feels honest," I replied. "Honest keeps us out of confusion." I offered ice water on the porch instead of an invitation inside. The May heat lay over the concrete like a warmed quilt. Condensation slid down the cups and pooled at our feet. We set a time for a Sunday phone call to align calendars. I didn't mention the church potluck. I didn't mention microphones or stories. Care works best when everyone tells the truth on paper, I said. Jody exhaled through her nose in a narrow stream. Adnan touched the edge of the frame with 2 fingers as if testing a railing, then dropped his hand. Inside again, I scanned the signed pages and saved the files with names that will make sense a year from now. I stapled the certified mail stub to a cover sheet for the HOA and set it by my purse for the post office. The printer's confirmation cooled in my palm. On the way to the kitchen, I checked the mini frame. The bubble still sat between its lines. The house felt orderly, not hard, like a spine, not a fence. I set the kettle and placed Travis's pocket watch by the sink. The second hand kept company with the warming water. While it heated, I read the frame out loud once, the way you test a bridge before crossing. The words sounded like me. That mattered. I circled Sunday on the calendar and tucked the flyer into my purse. Paper on a doorframe code, on a card ink on a page, small things aligned, hold more than a speech ever could. Later, I wiped a faint fingerprint off the frame and felt the raised seal through the guest license. In classrooms, I used to tape rules at child height so the kids could practice good habits. Today, I posted mine at adult eye level so the adults could practice mine. The sun lowered and threw a strip of porch shade across the mat like a ribbon. 2 envelopes waited by the door. The HOA copy would travel tomorrow, the binder copy would not. I checked the lock and breathed the particular relief that comes when a boundary stands up by itself. When the door frame held the rules straighter than any argument, I folded the church flyer once more and slid it into my purse. 2 days from now, a microphone might try to soften what ink had made plain. The frame would remember better than the mic. So would I. I carried the casserole through the fellowship hall doors while Teresa held them with her elbow. She stuck a paper name tag on my sweater, then one on herself, the tidy librarian script she never lost. Folding chairs lined the room in uneven rows. Kids darted between knees. The bulletin board by the entry glittered with push pins and flyers. A small microphone waited on a folding stand beside a card that read, "Stories or Thanks." I set our dish on the long table, breathed once, and took in the easy noise of Sundays. Quiet hope hummed under my ribs, steady as the pocket watch I had left on my dresser at home. Near the dessert table, Jody found the microphone like a moth, nosed the porch light. Her smile was perfect, practiced, pleasant. She just wanted to say a quick word, someone announced, already nodding along. Jody kept her tone feather light. "Families misunderstand each other sometimes," she said, "but we're only trying to keep Marjorie safe." A few polite nods answered. Adnan hovered behind her, a step back, eyes not steady. A squeal of feedback pinched the room. I pressed a napkin between my palms and waited, letting the moment float past me instead of through me. I walked to the corkboard without touching the mic. From my tote, I took 3 printed receipts with their black and white QR codes, Roof Fund Pantry Drive, children's books dates marching back 2 years. I pinned them in a clean column. Beside them, I fixed a single page, the house rules now posted on my doorframe, the line about scheduled visits, the emergency number in bold. Underneath, I taped a sentence in 14-point type. If anyone is concerned for my safety, these are the supports already in place. Teresa nudged the corners square with one finger until the papers sat like picture frames. The potluck coordinator paused, read, and whispered, "Thank you." A woman in a blue cardigan drifted over with lemonade. "Do you need rides to appointments?" she asked. I showed her the safety checklist on my phone, grab bars, non-slip mats, neighbors listed above family, for nights, primary doctor on speed dial. "Teresa is my first call," I added, and Teresa nodded once. "My lawyer covers the rest." Jody stepped toward us, eyes sliding to the board. For a heartbeat, she stalled. "You didn't have to make this public," she said softly. "I didn't," I said. "The roof already did that for me." She looked away. Adnan studied the floor tiles as if they could answer for him. By noon, the board had its own small audience. A parishioner lifted a phone, scanned a QR square, and the donation page bloomed on her screen with my name in the confirmation line. She gave me a gentle thumbs up and asked for my casserole recipe. Teresa smiled without showing teeth. Jody muttered, "This is manipulative." Teresa answered, "It's a bulletin board," and returned to stacking plates. I refilled lemonade and let the room relearn what paper remembers better than a microphone. In the parking lot, heat shimmered above the asphalt. Adnan lingered at my car door. "Mom, can we talk? Just us," he said, voice low. Tuesday afternoon, I replied in my living room with calendars open and my counsel copied. He nodded once, hands empty, as if he had expected to hold something and found nothing there. We set the time and the sun pressed down and the day moved forward. Back home, the kitchen smelled like nutmeg and dish soap. I slid the casserole from the tote and set it to cool, then printed the photo Teresa had taken of the corkboard with my receipts and rules. It went into the ethics binder behind the email thread from Thursday. On an HOA cover sheet, I wrote, "House rules posted and acknowledged in community setting today," and stapled the print behind it. Teresa checked the mini frame by the door. The little bubble in the level sat exactly between its lines. Next, I said, "Keys will have to follow the rules." She tapped the side pocket of her tote. Metal brushed metal with a neat, promising clink. When she left, I rinsed 2 mugs, wiped the counter, and let the quiet settle. The house felt aligned like a quilt block, pressed flat seams meeting. I set the kettle for tea and sat by the door where the frame watched over the threshold. My breath matched the click of cooling pans, slow and sure. The corkboard would keep its truth. The rules would keep the door. And tomorrow, a single piece of metal would find its tray. I brewed the tea, but let it cool, while I wrote 3 lines in my journal about the morning where we stood what was said, who offered help without being asked. I wrote the times in the margin and underlined the sentence about supports already in place. Then I closed the book and set it on the side table beneath the pocket watch, as if the house itself were signing my notes. Across the room, sunlight slid across the floorboards in a long, forgiving stripe. I thought of the microphone and the corkboard again, and how one asked for attention while the other asked for proof. I am old enough to prefer proof. Age has taught me that a calm boundary is a door that still opens only with a hinge that does not squeal. Before I turned out the kitchen light, I checked the frame one more time. It held steady. So did I. Teresa arrived just after 9, a stainless tray tucked beneath her arm like a librarian carrying a thin book. She set it on my porch table beneath the mini frame where the house rules hung straight. "For anything that belongs to the house, not to guests," she said. Morning light ran across the brushed metal in clean bars. We nudged it a final half inch until tray and frame made a neat column. I thanked her. She answered with a small nod, patted the blue planter where our backup key once lived, and crossed back through the hedge. At 10, the front walk clicked with 2 sets of steps. Jody led with a smile borrowed from fundraisers. Adnan followed hands empty. We only held the keys for emergencies. Jody said voice suite for neighbors. I tapped the line about scheduled access and emergency protocol. Emergencies have numbers, I said. Schedules have calendars. Adnan asked if they could keep 1 key just in case. I lifted the tray an inch and let it ring softly against the wood. Keys go where the rules live. Fine, Jody said, but the word had teeth. I handed Adnan a microfiber cloth. Set what you have on the tray. He placed a brass key. Jody held a fob as if it deserved an apology, then released it. I opened my pocket notebook and read back dates they had entered for drop-offs that required no entry. If there are duplicates, I said return them by day's end. No questions asked. Adnan's shoulders lowered a fraction. Jody stared at the hedge as if it would grow an alibi. Inside, I generated a single-use guest code and printed it, boxing the hours valid 2 to 4 this afternoon for the hallway light Adnan offered to fix. Hostile, Jody said. Safe, I answered. Access is a calendar, not a feeling. The printer answered with a tidy whir. I set the code beside the tray like a ticket for a train that would arrive whether anyone liked the timetable or not. When they tried to stretch the conversation, I let the latch meet the strike plate with a single polite click. No slam, no scene. The sound felt like a period after a long sentence. We'll look for duplicates, Jody said. Adnan nodded, gazing somewhere between the mat and his shoes. I'll be back at 2 for the light. Before lunch, I reviewed the access card I printed last year when Adnan installed the thermostat. I slid it into the ethics binder behind a tab marked Visits and added today's time in small block letters. Systems make memory honest. When grief is involved, people say they forgot or meant well or assumed. A date, a time, a code window, those don't accuse. They illuminate. I walked the hallway, touched the grab bar, the rubber mat, the laminated emergency contacts on the pantry door, and felt steadier than any speech could make me. At the sideboard, I placed a sealed manila envelope labeled in block letters, Title Hold Instruction. A sticky note underlined Tuesday 3rd, 15 p.m. with Avery at the title office. The envelope did not look heavy, but the air around it steadied. I poured water and shifted my late husband's pocket watch from my left hand to my right, a habit I keep when I want time to move only at my pace. At 2, Adnan texted before entry. The lock chirped inside the code window. He fixed the hallway flicker with the Phillips screwdriver. I set out, replaced a bulb, then tested the switch 3 times. We spoke about wattage and the pantry shelf he promised to anchor. He works best when the task is a thing, not a person. I'm trying, he said at last. Trying works best inside the rules, I answered. He signed a simple task, slip date time, what was done, and set the pen parallel to the edge, as if neatness could steady the heart. Dusk brought the day's answer. A thin envelope slid under the tray. Inside lay a single key on a tiny ring. No note. Across the hedge, Teresa's lamp blinked once and steadied. I set the key on the metal. The sound was a soft punctuation. I photographed the tray with a timestamp and emailed the image to my ethics file subject line. S7 key returned. The mini frame above caught the last band of sun and held it like a line drawn with a straight edge. The house exhaled. I wiped the tray with the cloth and clipped the envelope into the binder. The rules did not gloat. The metal didn't either. Paper had spoken before. Now metal answered in its own language, weight, sound, place. I brewed tea and sat near the door so the frame and tray stayed in my periphery, steady companions that neither argued nor forgot. A boundary is not a wall. It is a door that tells the truth about when it opens. Before bed, I set the stainless tray a fraction closer to the frame, the way a picture is nudged level by touch. I wrote a brief entry in my journal, date time key returned at 6:45 p.m., photograph filed, and slipped the page behind visits. I dialed voicemail and saved Jody's earlier message about making things easier, labeling it May 12. Then I check Tuesday's calendar, print copies of hold instruction, carry my ID, ask Avery to stamp receipt and email confirmation. I do not chase apologies. I collect records. The watch ticked. The house kept pace. Tomorrow I would carry the sealed envelope to my call with Avery and ask the title office to place a hold rumor could not move. Tonight I let the porch cool to gray and the watch tick into evenness. When the tray held more metal than excuses, the house and I were aligned again, quiet, precise, recorded where it mattered. I woke on Tuesday with the same steady metronome inside my chest that the pocket watch kept on the sideboard. Before shoes, before coffee, I laid the manila folder on my desk. On top went the life estate summary with its recording number under that the guest license we had signed, then the reply all printouts from Thursday, the photo of the rules frame and my driver's license. I added a one-page memo titled, Hold Instruction Dates and Initials Neatest Stitches. I took a quick photo of the stack for a timestamp and slid the phone beside the pen. Coffee could wait, paperwork could not. By 10, I had the title Office on Speaker. This is Avery, the voice said, warm but brisk. We went through control questions, address, parcel ID, last 4 of my license. Thank you, Ms. Hale, she said. What can we do for you today? I kept my tone even. Please post, do not accept conveyance without owner in-person verification, and add a 2-signature note on any escrow touching my parcel. She paused the way professionals do when a request is precise. We can flag the file and publish an internal bulletin to every escrow desk. Her certainty landed like a chair placed square on the floor. At 12:10, I stood at the glass window while Avery scanned my ID in the memo. The red date stamp landed with a soft thud. Stamped received. She stapled my page to their file and slid a printed confirmation under the slot. This posts instantly, she said. Partner offices get the same note. The reference number sat in bold near the top, TO 051-325-1118. I read it once, then folded the paper and placed it in the folder as if tucking a child's shirt into a drawer. The county annex was 3 blocks away. At the records counter, I filed a short owner's notice of interest, plain words that said, I lived where I lived, and that any paper moved without me would meet daylight. The clerk printed a receipt with book and page, then pointed to a laminated card about property fraud alert. Free service, she said. Email and text if anything touches your name. I entered my parcel ID, watched the screen blink, and heard a single chime that sounded like a seatbelt clicking. She circled the book and page for me, neat as a teacher, and nodded toward the door. I carried a half-turkey sandwich to a concrete bench under a live oak and texted Gloria a photo of the title receipt. Hold posted, county notice filed, I wrote. She thumbed back, good. If a mobile notary ever claims you signed something, we'll request the log. I folded the napkin into quarters the way my husband once folded shop rags, small, square, useful. The bench was warm from the sun, useful too. Halfway to the car, my phone pinged again. Property fraud alert search performed against your name. 1 p.m. I didn't hurry. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to myself and to Gloria with a subject line that said only FYI search, not filing. The sky was an ordinary Texas blue. Ordinary can be a form of mercy. At home, I set the title receipt in a clear sleeve behind the doorframe's rules so it could be seen without shouting. I copied the county's book and page onto an index card and taped it inside the console drawer where I keep batteries and rubber bands. Teresa tapped at the door. I left the chain on and opened to the width of trust. Done, she asked. Done, I said. She glanced at the stainless tray under the rules and smiled at the neat rectangle of paper I placed there. Keys on one side, proof on the other. Text stacked while I made tea. From Jody. We need to list options urgently. From Adnan, can we talk tonight? I answered neither message directly. I sent one to both the same sentence I had written before all home matters scheduled Sunday 3 p.m. in my living room with counsel copied. The phone went face down. The kettle clicked off. I waited a full minute before I poured because a minute is sometimes the difference between boiling and use. I carried my cup to the sideboard and set the pocket watch beside the folder. The second hand swept patient and impartial. Paper does not argue, it stands. Across the hall, the mini frame held its polite language at eye level. On the tray, the county receipt rested like a small, flat shield. I breathed not deeply, not theatrically, just enough to feel the house breathe back. The rules did not move. They did not need to. I wrote the book and page on the index card again, slower this time, so my hand would remember what my eyes already knew. That evening, the sun slid down the brick like a closing book. I wrote the day's steps in my log with the same pen I'd used on Sunday's place card date. Time reference number, clerk counter alert, ping reply sent. I added a line about the bench and the live oak because memory is sturdier when it has shade. I slid the sheet behind the ethics tab and turned off the lamp. Rumor loves the dark because it imagines no one is keeping records. This house now keeps records. So do I. When the watch ticked past 9, I shut the chain, checked the frame with a fingertip to be sure it was level, and turned toward bed. The phone lit once more on the table, an unread bubble I let float. Sunday would come soon enough. Between now and then there would be only the sound of a quiet home and a stamped page that would not whisper back. I set the folder, flat set the watch on top, and let the second hand lead me into sleep. Thursday began with sunlight on the kitchen table and a tight, ordinary quiet. My phone pinged, "Property fraud alert, new search event." Before the sound faded, a regional bank number flashed. I let it ring twice, set the pen beside my open binder, and answered on speaker. Mrs. Hale, a calm voice, asked, "This is Mr. Laird from Fraud Prevention. Are you the owner and are you able to speak privately?" I am, I said. "Go ahead." He verified my details with patient locksmith questions. "Then did you authorize a care facility deposit inquiry linking your parcel ID as anticipated collateral?" "No," I said evenly. "Place a hold on any new links. From now on, call back to my landline only with this passphrase." I read the word I'd chosen, one my husband kept on his watch card. "Keys, not guesses." "Understood," he said. "Case number, BF05165-442. I'm emailing confirmation." The message chimed while we spoke. I wrote the number in the margin square. "And dark. Paper over panic." I printed the email, clipped it to the fraud alert, and slid both into the binder. I forwarded them to Gloria and to Avery at the title office. Avery left a brief voicemail a few minutes later. "Hold flag is active. Good catch, Ms. Hale." Near 11, a knock carried a clipboard to my door. A woman in a blazer stood on the porch. "Notary Webb," she said, almost smiling. "I'm here to witness signatures for a care agreement should only take a moment." The chain stayed on. I nodded toward the mini frame by the door. "No scheduled appointment. Counsel not copied. There will be no signing here today." "The family asked for urgency," she said. "My house honors schedules, not pressure." I asked for her card through the gap. She slid it across. I placed it on the stainless tray beside the county receipt and took a photo. Names are better than stories. Back at the desk, I emailed the photo to Gloria Webb, 11:15 a.m., unannounced. Gloria replied within minutes. She would request the notary's journal, send a cease and desist for doorstep attempts, and require all future signings to occur only in her office. I e-signed and watched the PDF blink, sent. The tray held the card like a pinned moth. Texts arrived that didn't understand paper. From Jody, "We're just trying to help. Please cooperate." From Adnan, I didn't know about a notary. I answered both in one thread. "All matters, Sunday 3 p.m. in my living room, counsel copied. No unannounced signings." The word "delivered" sat under the message like a small stone. Friday evening, Teresa met me at the fence line with an envelope forwarded from Gloria. Inside was a clipped image from a notary log client name, time 11:15 a.m. Status line, signer unavailable, door refusal. I traced the sentence with my thumb, not angry, simply awake. I set the dining table the way I set my files, square, simple, visible. 4 folders for Sunday waited on the sideboard, title hold, bank case, notary log with cease and desist, and a thinner one labeled care plan. That last held the truth that breathes neighbor contacts, doctor notes, grab bars, church rides, the checklist I'd made when no one was looking. I placed the pocket watch on top, secondhand, sweeping like a metronome for patience. The house settled. Through the doorway, I could see the rules frame the tray, the card, the county receipt. None of it raised its voice. None of it had to. I poured tea and let it cool. At 9, I wrote 3 lines in my log alert ping bank call with case number, notary name captured. I added a 4th Sunday at 3. Paper speaks, not voices. I turned out the lamp and listened to the second-hand count what remained of the week. Vigilance, then rest. Someone had tried to move me with whispers. The stamp had answered, and now the records had a name to file beside the whisper. I closed the binder and left it on the table, ready for company, scheduled, seated, and seen. I set 3 straight chairs facing the coffee table and left the tray of cookies in the pantry. This was not that kind of Sunday. On the table, I lined up 4 folders, title, hold, bank case, notary, log, care, plan, and centered my late husband's pocket watch on top, the chain coiled like a tiny brass rode. My laptop was open to Gloria's video tile on mute. Teresa sat to my left with a small notebook spine aligned to the table's edge. We were ready before the doorbell. I met them at the entry. "We start here," I said, and nodded to the mini frame of house rules on the doorframe. I read the paragraph aloud without comment, the simple sentences that had steadied the week, no unscheduled entry. No key custody emergencies, call 911, first visits by appointment. I returned to my chair. Gloria unmuted long enough to confirm she was present, then faded back to silent counsel. The stainless tray on the console reflected our faces as smudged ovals. Title and county, I said, opening the first folder. I set the title office confirmation on the table, so the red date stamp faced them. Reference number, 251325 Ars 118. Beside it, I placed the county clerk notice with its book and page. Gloria's voice was plain as news. No conveyance of this property can occur without Marjorie's in-person verified consent. Alerts are active with both title and county. No one argued with the stamp. Next came the bank packet. Case BFE 0516254442, I read. Callback only to my landline with the passphrase on this card. I did not read the word itself. I let them see the card and the way it slid halfway back under the paper. Gloria added, "Any attempt to pledge the home as anticipated collateral without the owner's verified consent is blocked." Jody's jaw moved, then stilled. Adnan studied the toe of his shoe as if it might offer an exit. I opened the notary excerpt and laid the card photo beside it. Notary web came Thursday unannounced. The log reads, signer unavailable, door refusal. Going forward, all signings, if any, occur only in counsel's office. I let the silence run until it finished speaking. Teresa dated a line in her notebook and looked up. "We end with care, not control," I said, and opened the last folder. There were photos of grab bars and the non-slip mat, the neighbor contact tree with Teresa, first the church ride number, and my physician's note about independent living with supports. "Help is welcome when scheduled," I said. Teresa nodded once. That was all it needed. I carried one more paper from the console, the HOA courtesy notice acknowledging the posted rules and visitor expectations. Members are asked to respect posted schedules, I read. Its tone matched the frame on the door, courteous, not performative. The house and the street now agreed on time. "You each have 2 minutes," I said, setting the pocket watch in front of them where the second hand could be seen. "Needs not narratives." Jody went first. "We were trying to keep you safe," she said, voice dipped in apology, then veered toward the familiar fog of intention. I held up one finger. She stopped before the second hand reached the 6. Adnan kept his eyes on the folders. "We're under strain," he said, which was both true and smaller than the truth. "Numbers," I said gently. "Bring them in writing this week if you want to discuss help." I closed the folders and stacked them in their original order. "My home is not collateral, not rumor, and not a future you can spend," I said. "If you need help, ask in writing. Gloria and I will review on Wednesday." I stood, and the room stood with me. We stepped to the porch. The heat carried the faint smell of cut grass. For a moment, we were only 3 people adjusting to light. Back inside, I watched them through the glass. They did not slide anything under the stainless tray. No new keys appeared. Teresa wrote the meeting's end time in her notebook, then capped her pen and folded her hands. On the laptop, Gloria said, "I'll be in touch," and signed off. The house exhaled. I realigned the pocket watch so noon sat square to the frame and returned the folders to the sideboard. I did not gloat, and I did not grieve. I watered the fern in the corner until the soil went dark, then pressed my palm against the cool doorframe where the rules watched the room without eyes. Paper had spoken first and last, and no one had raised a voice. The tray held only its reflection and the county receipt the quiet proof that a week of small decisions can turn a home from rumor back into place. On the console, I left a folded index card for myself, Wednesday 10 a.m. Call with Gloria. Thursday gather Adnan's numbers if he sends them. Sunday church rides. List to office. I added a short note under it for my own eyes only, steady wins, and slid the card beneath the clear sleeve that held the title receipt. Through the window, I could see the live oak shift in the breeze leaves flashing between dark and bright, as if the tree were turning pages. I have learned to do the same, turn one page, then the next, and let the words stand on paper, longer than voices linger in a room. Today's page ended cleanly. The door clicked softly behind me. The watch ticked. I let the minute pass and then another, listening to the steady count I'd learned to trust, waiting as always for the next right thing to do, and ready to put it in writing before anyone reached for a microphone. The manila envelope sat tucked beneath the stainless tray half hidden by the county receipt. On the front, in my son's quick hand, Mom numbers. I slid the chain open the door and carried it to the table. Inside, a printed household budget, 3 late notices, and a pre-approval denial with a red corner stamp. The denial line read like a verdict: insufficient assets, proposed collateral unclear. I laid each page flat the way nurses lay out instruments and felt the house go quiet around me. I made lunch the way I make decisions, slowly with light and air. I set a placemat, poured water, and placed the budget beside the plate. The categories marched down the page without pity. Lake House HOA arrears, credit card minimums, a private school deposit, encircled by Jody's highlighter care facility retainer anticipated. The calculator said what no one wanted to say. The shortfall wasn't mysterious. It was arithmetic. I drew my own neat circle around that retainer line and let the pen rest. At 1:15, Adnan knocked alone. I kept the chain until I saw his shoulders, then I opened. We sat without hugging, facing the coffee table, where Sunday's 4 folders still waited. He looked older than last week. "We're sinking," he said. The lake house hasn't sold. The lender who promised a bridge loan wanted future equity noted. He hadn't signed. Jody pushed the notary, he added, voice low. He didn't reach for the folders. I let the room hold the confession without filling it. "My house is not your flotation device," I said. No anger, just a sentence that fit inside the frame on the door. He nodded, eyes wet, and asked, "What do we do?" I slid him a blank pad. "Tell the truth on paper. Then we call people who can actually help." We moved to the kitchen where the light is kinder. He listed obligations. I marked the drains that could be cut without bleeding: premium streaming yard service at the lake, subscription boxes stacked in a garage. He barely visits. We drew 3 columns: cancel, call, cut, and put items where they belonged. We underlined the headers twice. Clarity is cheap, confusion expensive. We wrote the bank's hours in the margin. Fear keeps to hour. I dialed Gloria on speaker. "What helps without endangering my property?" I asked. She answered like a teacher. Credit counseling with a legitimate agency. hardship with the primary bank, realistic listing of the lake house at a price that invites buyers, and absolutely no cosigns, no pledges, no anticipated collateral. We wrote her points in plain ink and underlined the word no. At 3:10, Adnan scrolled to an email thread. Jody had forwarded a pre-admission checklist with a highlight that read, "Funding, via Property Equity Family Home Acceptable." A coordinator replied, "We can move fast if elder signs basic consent." He handed me the phone with both hands like a hot plate. "Forward it to Gloria and to me," I said. He did subject line, "For record, no consent given." I printed the thread and slid it into the ethics binder behind notary log. Teresa returned a baking tin at 4. Adnan thanked her for checking on me last week. She gave him the simplest boundary in Texas. "We watch out. We don't sign for each other." He nodded. The sun hit the mini frame just right and threw a neat rectangle of light across the tray. At 4:30, my phone lit with Jody's text, "If you're meeting without me, that's manipulation." I set the phone face down and wrote a new label in block letters, "Theirs," then slid the lake house listing printout inside. Paper does not rise to taunts, it stacks. By 5:10, we were ready to separate help from rescue. I wrote my terms in plain language and read them aloud. I will not co-sign lien or pledge my home. I will pay for one session with a vetted financial counselor and the appraisal fee to relist the lake house at a realistic price. Support, not surrender. I signed dated and handed him the page. He signed a receipt that said, "Offered and accepted." The pen marks looked steadier than his hands. He stood at 6, the budget and receipt under his arm. At the door, he said, "I wanted to be the son who rescued you." I answered, "Be the man who doesn't drown his own family." He nodded, wiped his face with the back of his hand, and stepped into the evening heat. The latch closed with a soft click that sounded like a boundary staying put. I filed the day in quiet layers denial letter budget with circles, email, printout, receipt with both our initials. I added a sticky that read, "No emergencies today, only choices." The pocket watch on the sideboard was somehow louder in the stillness, as if time applauded clear rules. I poured water and carried my glass to the doorway. The tray caught a sliver of the sunset and held it like a coin. Inside the console, I tucked a blank note card beside a stamp. Some truths need numbers, some need handwriting. The house no longer felt like a battleground. It felt like a ledger finely balancing a place where care and control had been separated with a ruler and a line. Tomorrow could bring more paper. Tonight had brought enough. When I turned out the kitchen light, a small rectangle on the doorframe still glowed. It didn't demand. It reminded. And in the quiet that followed, I thought of the only message I wanted next. Not a bill, not a demand, not a plan. A child's careful letters, spelling what adults had avoided, who I am to him and who he is to me. An envelope waited under the stainless tray, its printing wide and careful the way fourth graders form letters. I slid it free. Inside lay a sheet torn from wide-ruled paper crayon, heavy in the lines, a small square house, a square window, and a red heart floating inside it like a lantern. "Grandma homes are for birthdays and sleepovers. Please don't be sad." Tyler had signed his name like a promise. I pressed the page flat with both palms. A breath I did not know I'd been holding, lengthened, then steadied. I called Gloria on video. We had already drafted the addendum. Today, we would set the words so they could carry themselves. She shared her screen. I read each clause aloud steady as I used to read to my preschoolers care means presents not purchases. No one may claim guardianship by paperwork alone. All decisions require my clear current consent. We executed by remote notarization. The printer hummed and fed out 2 copies warm as bread. I signed both and slid one behind the life estate summary binder. We finished the trust adjustment next. It was modest by design, an annual gift for those who actually show up neighbor rides, church errands, the hand that knocks before entering. For Tyler, a small education bond that ripens when he completes a service project of his choosing. I initialed each page, then wrote his name once neatly because he had written mine. By late morning, Teresa stepped onto the porch with 2 short witness letters, dates, and hours written in her librarian script. Parishioners had added a line each about rides and casserole deliveries. Nothing grand, only truth. I placed them in a clear sleeve labeled Community and felt the house exhale. Sunday brought the proof I'd gathered without speeches. On the sideboard, I laid the photo archive, the rules in their frame, the keys on the metal, the title receipt with its red stamp, the county book and page, each image time-stamped and printed. Beside it, the ledger of entries and calls. The room looked like it could testify without me. At 3, Adnan arrived with Tyler. Jody paused at the threshold. I pointed first to the frame, then to the photos. No narration. Paper knows its job. Tyler spotted his note in the front sleeve of the binder and smiled toward the window in his drawing as if finding that heart again. Adnan reached into his pocket, then stopped. There was one more, he said. From his palm, he slid a flat silver key onto the stainless tray. The sound was small, clear, and final. Tyler watched shoulders square as if a ceremony had been completed in a single chime. I offered a 1-page statement. "This is not punishment," I said. "It is how we continue." The page acknowledged the rushed attempt with a notary promise that all matters would be scheduled and copied to counsel, and renounced any use of my house as collateral. Adnan read once and signed. Jody stepped forward, eyes on the floor. She read. She signed. There were no speeches. That was the change. I turned the sheet and slid out a second page, no longer than a grocery list. It read, "I am sorry for using the word safety to push what was convenience. I will not attempt unannounced signings or speak for your needs without invitation. I will respect your home and your time." I pointed to the dateline. Adnan signed first, then added, "I will repay what you cover for us, even if slowly." Jody pressed the pen hard, the ink slightly embossed. I placed both pages into the binder while they watched the sound of the rings closing, small but final. After they left, I scanned the pages and emailed Gloria filed today. Her reply, received. I printed it and filed it behind the pledge proof of change. We walked to the small park under the live oaks. A brass plate glinted on the bench. The church committee had let me sponsor the permanent plaque already ordered. The words were simple. For those who show up. Tyler traced each letter. Teresa stood back and took one quiet photo. The breeze moved through the leaves like pages turning. Back home, we sat a moment on the porch. I told them the new clause and trust terms, not as a threat, but as a boundary that would outlive any of us. I thanked Adnan for the key, and I thanked Jody for the signature. "Let the signatures do the talking now," I said. The pocket watch ticked in my hand, old time crossing new lines. At the entry console, I set everything where it belongs. The county receipt stayed on the tray square calm. The witness letters filed behind Community. The trust amendment and addendum slid into their tabs. Tyler's crayon house kept its place in the very front, so the heart in the window could look out and look in. Dusk warmed the glass of the mini frame. Teresa waved from across the hedge and went inside. Adnan buckled Tyler into the car. Jody lifted a hand, once, then turned away. I wasn't angry. I was not relieved. I was settled. Some stories end with applause. Mine ended with furniture in the right rooms. Before supper, I made one last tidy stack, each page dated in blue ink. Paper tells the truth when asked. So I stood in the doorway and said the only vow that still needed air. This house will keep only what loves it, and I will too. I locked the door without fear, not keeping people out, but keeping the right ones in. The watch ticked. The tray rested. The heart in the window held. I'm an old mother who learned that love shows up and gossip doesn't. When safety became a script to take my house, I chose paper patience and clear rules. You can, too, write things down, post boundaries, call counsel, invite help that arrives with respect. Dignity is not noise. It's a door that locks and opens on purpose. What would you put in your own house rules? Which page of your life needs a date stamp today? If this story met you, subscribe to the channel and say 1 or your city below. If it missed, tell me why and where you're watching. Share one practice that protects your peace. Maybe a neighbor's spare key, a written plan, or a firm no. Subscribe for the story and invite a friend.